All right, let's start. Hello, guys. Welcome to Bit Summit. My name is Farhad. I'm Director of Technology for Cloud Engineering at Agile, and I'm very happy to see all of your faces here today. Been in the industry for 13 years, and since the beginning, it was apparent to me that cloud engineering and infrastructure teams are going to be the heart of tech companies. But with great power comes great responsibility, of course, and great challenges. Today, we have a set of talks that are going to help us get some ideas about those challenges and hopefully also have some potential solutions to them. So I will hand it over to Steve. He's from Platform Fix, and he's going to talk to us about...
I'm going to talk to you about how 7 engineering leaders and a CFO exposed 2.3 million and the journey that we went on to fix the problem. So I want you to picture this. 7 technical leaders collectively earning 800K, but their careers nearly got destroyed because a CFO asked one simple question. And I know what you're all thinking. That wouldn't happen to me, right? I know my systems inside out. So by the end of this talk, I'm going to explain to you that question that CFO asked and why it was costing 2.3 million. So my name's Steve Wade. I'm the founder of Platform Fix. I've been working with companies all over the world fixing around 52 different platform transformation disasters. And today I'm going to talk to you about why you need to be asking the difficult questions, not the one blindsided by it. So I'm going to take Q&A at the end. If you scan the QR code, feel free to ask your question. If you could give it a name, it makes it a little bit more personal when I'm communicating. That QR code will also be used for the polls that I have throughout this talk. So you probably want to keep that web page open. I'll give you a couple of seconds to scan that. So I want to start with the first poll. So I want to understand the room. So if your CFO walked into a room today and asked you about your platform disaster recovery, which one of these options would you go with? So would you go with, give a confident answer with a specific timeline, you start explaining why it's complicated, you look around the room hoping that someone else answers, or you feel your stomach drop because you don't really want to be able to answer or you don't have an answer to the question? Okay, give a confident answer. What you don't know is there's going to be a quiz, so I'm going to hold you accountable. So I want to start with the industry's biggest lie that we've been selling ourselves. So we think that if we choose every tool, implement every framework, and practice every process, everything's going to be perfectly fine, right? It's a complete and utter lie, because your CFO is the one that's calculating risk, right? So while you're collecting tools like Pokemon cards, right, they're calculating operational risk. And in this instance, the bank that I was working at, their operational risk worked out to be 2.3 million. So I want you to imagine this. You walk into a boardroom, corner office, mahogany table, 8 seats. And there's 7 engineers sitting on that table that have more Kubernetes experience than everybody in this room combined, I guarantee you. Sarah, the CFO, walks in, sits down, opens her notebook, and she asks one question. So there's 7 engineering leaders in that room. They have a combined experience of about 94 years, and they have a salary of 800,000. How long do you think it took them to answer this business critical question that she asked? So it's 5 seconds of career-deafening silence. And then someone went, well, it kind of depends what we lose. And that's where their careers started decaying from there. Why did they start decaying? Because they needed to be able to answer a question, and they got so engrossed and thought that technical sophistication was more important than operational risk. So I know what you're all thinking, right? And some of you even answered this. That wouldn't happen to me. I know all my systems inside out. So I'm going to call your bluff. Prove it. So raise your hand if I asked you for a disaster recovery timeline and you could give me an answer. Hands up. Not it depends, not a range, a single number. Nobody. Okay. So then if I asked you to put your hands up again and I said, are you thinking about things like data recovery, full application verification, CDN switchover? Probably not. So the fact that all of you have got your hands down, you're the group of 7 engineers that are currently sitting in that boardroom, not knowing how to answer the question. So this is when we had the 2.3 million wake-up call. So we were processing this bank about £2 million annually through the system, right? And this platform was running on 2 things, heroics and faith. Faith that the backups actually worked, faith that the documentation was accurate, and more interestingly, the recovery strategy was kind of just recover the data and pray that it works. So for any of you who have worked in a financial institute, like, faith is not a platform strategy, it's a compliance violation hiding in plain sight. And to give you an understanding of where that 2.3 million came from, it came from delayed launches, operational overhead, and missed opportunities with the market. So what does that 2.3 million pound chaos look like? So let me give you some numbers. 150 microservices deployed 7 different ways. 23 configuration repositories to deploy a multitude of different components. And then documentation that was kind of accurate. So this wasn't technical debt, right? This is technical bankruptcy because they were hemorrhaging money left, right, and center. So before we get started on this transformation, I want to talk to you about the importance of perspective. So if I hold my 2 hands up like this, what do you all see? 2 hands, right? But I see 2 palms. Same hands, different perspective. And in the boardroom, there was 2 different perspectives there. All of the 7 engineers saw a technical masterpiece. But the CFO walked in and she saw operational risk immediately. And that's where we can have problems when we're doing platform transformations. We need to think of the business side, not just the technology. So I want you to all cross your arms for a second. So cross your arms. Feels relatively comfortable, right? Now cross them the other way. So that discomfort you're feeling, that's not logical resistance to change. That's completely neurological reality, right? So when you try and force a new perspective on somebody, you have to understand and appreciate how long it takes the human mind to be able to process change. So we had 5 stages of transformation. We started with inherited chaos. That was the beep show that we all walked into, right? That was the disaster. Then we had the acknowledgement of the awakening. We got the brutal truth of what was going on, right? We had to stop lying to ourselves that we didn't have a problem. Then we moved on to strategic alignment. So this is like building a coalition before you build the solution, and we're going to come on to why that's important in a minute. Then we have the technical implementation. How do we make the complex simple and invisible to the user? And then finally, in the bit that I'm more interested in, the human transformation. How did we turn heroes into advocates? So stage 1 was inherited chaos. So most platform teams that I've worked with over the last decade, they say, oh, we're modern and we're mature, right? And when I ask them what do they mean by that, they show me their monitoring dashboards. They show me their GitOps pipelines. They show me their Kubernetes clusters, and then they try and really impress me with their service mesh. And then the CFO comes in and asks one simple question, and the whole thing just falls over like a house of cards because they can't answer business level questions. So all of the companies that I've worked with over the last decade, they all had similar patterns. So the first pattern here was that they had no infrastructure as code. They did everything via ClickOps. Sometimes if you were lucky, those clicks were done in staging and production. If you were unlucky, the engineer went on lunch and forgot to do the ones in production, but it's okay because they're in staging. That caused what I call environmental schizophrenia. So rather than our environments being identical triplets, they ended up being distinct cousins of each other. So what happens then? You get deployment roulette, right? You're basically praying that this thing works, and everything, you duck behind your terminal when you hit merge because you don't know what the outcome's going to be. But it went a little bit deeper than that. So there was this curse of tribal knowledge. So everything and all of the knowledge that people had were in people's minds and not manuals, right? And these people left or they were on holiday, and guess what happened? Nothing got done because the knowledge has disappeared. Then they had a plan to have disaster recovery at some point, but in a bank, as long as you have a plan, you're kind of all right. Apparently not, because the CFO asked the question. And then that caused this, right? So they were iterating so fast, they were moving so quickly, but they ended up breaking things, including the confidence in this people's platform. So I want to have a quick poll. Let's discuss how deep the chaos goes in this room. So which chaos pattern threatens your career the most? Yeah, it's always the same, right? There's no documentation. Everyone just does the work, merges the Jira ticket, everything's fine. So I want you to meet Alex. So Alex is the head of infrastructure. I renamed him this, Senior Vice President of Skepticism. So I said to Alex, you know what, everything that you've done so far, I think we should move to GitOps and base everything around GitOps. So guess what he said? He said, Steve, I've worked here 12 years. I'm the hero that they call at 2 a.m. in the morning. I can log into any server and fix any problem. And now you're telling me that I have to create a pull request and get it merged by juniors. No. So Alex wasn't protecting his tools, right? He was actually protecting his identity. And I was about to commit mass identity theft. But here's the interesting thing, right? People don't resist GitOps. They don't resist Kubernetes. They don't resist Terraform. They resist an identity theft. And what was happening is I was telling Alex now that his heroicism was no longer needed. So what does he mentally think? He thinks he's becoming obsolete. So I ended up having to try and get him to be convinced that I was just rebranding him, I wasn't replacing him. One evening, I was sat at my desk at home, and I thought to myself, damn, I'm in a world of pain here. Like, the board have asked me to come and do this transformation. Alex doesn't want to do anything. Everything's a no. Engineers are like, what the hell is Steve talking? What even is GitOps? And then I felt like a fraud, right? I'd basically failed. And then I had this realization that I had to actually do one thing. And that was when the awakening happened. So I got in front of a whiteboard, I went back to the office, and I wrote these 5 words. I say, I don't have the answers, we do. So now what happens is Alex gets more involved, because I give Alex the pen first. There was a little bit of social engineering in that. Then the developers get involved, the engineers get involved. Sarah, the CFO from compliance, comes with her long list, an Excel spreadsheet of compliance requirements. And then what happened is we were building a masterpiece together, right? And everybody was built in. So if I drop this pen on the floor, why does it hit the floor? Gravity. Can you see gravity? No. But it affects absolutely everything around us. And the same is true with culture, right? The tech is the easy part. The people are the difficult part. You've got to put arms around people's shoulders and take them with you. If you don't take them with you, you'll get saboteurs, not advocates. So my job was to take Alex with me. Stage 3 was strategic alignment. This is where most platform transformations go wrong. They go straight for the tooling first, right, without understanding the purpose of why they're doing the transformation in the first place. So we did that by working out what our why was. And our why was that we believed as an organization it would thrive if everyone could see and understand the systems that they were working on. We believed that transparency was more important than heroics, and we believed that the platform served the human, not the other way around. So once we had our why, we could build our how. And our how was going to be, we were going to use Git as the central source of truth. No more it depends. No more is Alex going to pick up the phone at 3 a.m. Something auditable and repeatable. And then with that, we had our what. Our what was going to be, we were going to be able to answer the CFO's question or any question that she had moving forward with confidence. We were going to give her that number at the end of it. So now comes on to the bit that you're really all interested in, right, which is the technical implementation. This is where the master plan meets the payroll. This is the bit we can't mess up. So Alex said to me, how are you going to convince developers to care about infrastructure? And I said, we're going to make it ridiculously simple. So how are we going to do that? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create Terraform modules. Imagine this is an infrastructure catalog. This is all of the modules that you're ever going to need to build your platform. And then inside that, we created these application or developer-friendly modules, and we worked in collaboration with the engineers and created the contract. So all they had to understand was these 4 variables for their S3 bucket. They didn't need to know it was getting backed up to Glacier and we were double replicating it to they didn't need to know that. All they needed to be aware of is this written contract that we had. Then we had this concept of Terraform routes, executed Terraform modules, consisting of 1 or more Terraform modules. And we executed Terraform modules in order to build the platform up. Here's an example, not expecting you to notice too much here. But if you look, we can see here we've got the Terraform repo, we've got the application S3 bucket, and then down here, we're going to create an IAM role, and we're going to use the application IAM role module. Right, relatively simple, relatively easy for them to understand what they needed to do to create the log ingestion. So that's great. We've got some kind of combined modules here, but how the hell are we going to get the developer experience right? And that's where Atlantis came in. So hands up people who are familiar with Atlantis. So Atlantis is basically Terraform by a pull request. So you open a pull request, Atlantis automatically plans it, you get it in a comment, you get approval, depending upon what environment you're in, depends upon how many approvals you need. The PR gets merged. Sorry, you run Atlantis apply, the apply is successful, PR is automatically merged, right? Developers love pull requests, so we had to get them into this flow of leveraging pull requests for everything that we were doing. Oh, she's back again. What about compliance, right? We're at a bank, we have to do compliance everywhere. So we use something called Fugue Regular. Hands up people who are familiar with Fugue Regular, now being acquired by Sneak. So it allowed you to be able to run policy against your Terraform code. So how did that work? You still did an Atlantis plan, but this time, rather than just having straight Terraform, you had a JSON output. We then merged in the policies. We ran the policy checks. We had a repository for that. Relatively simple to start with, more complicated when security got involved and compliance. And then if it passes, you're great. You can apply the changes. If you're not, you can't. You go and ask compliance if they'll give you like a waiver. They won't. You have to go back and fix the problem. So we were building compliance in from the beginning. So a quick reality check here before we move on any further. What's your current GitOps maturity in your organization? Full GitOps adoption. Okay, so a mix. So when it comes to GitOps, the first thing we needed to do is make sure that we had a clear repository structure. So we were leveraging Kustomize out the gate. Hands up, people familiar with Kustomize? Hands up. Okay, I don't need to tell everybody. So it works by base. Imagine base as your non-specific environment configuration, and then patches for each of your individual clusters. So this was our base configuration. This is our root directory. Inside of Kustomize, we had base, and then we had the clusters that we were currently deploying into. Because we were running the platform first, so we wanted to dog food this approach, we had cluster resources. So those were all of the kind of base level components that you need to be able to run Kubernetes. Not things like Prometheus and Grafana, everything but that. Then we had components. That was Prometheus, Grafana, et cetera, et cetera. We had versions here in the directories so that we could have different versions running in different environments relatively easily. Base configuration here, as an example, is Grafana. You'll notice here that we've got Grafana. We're using a Flux Helm release. You can see we have the Helm chart here. We pass in the version of the Helm chart that we want, and then further down here, we specify the non-environment specific configuration. So therefore, because we're pinning versions, we pin the tag of the version that we're running here. Sandbox patch, relatively trivial. It's the non-environment specific config, and if you look, we're running in SBX, and we have SBX here and here, right? So you can imagine what happens when we want to go to UAT or production. It's basically a glorified copy and paste and a horrific sed statement. You add this by adding the files to your customization. At the top there, you see that we're inheriting the base configuration of the components, and then you can see that we're doing strategic merges and we're merging in those patches. So that's great, right? We have a way of being able to do this like easy configuration for the workloads, but what about secrets? So just play yourself in the mind of Alex right now. I'm about to tell Alex that we're going to commit all the secrets to Git. Senior Vice President of Skepticism, you can just imagine how this is going to go. No, why are we going to do that? Why are we going to do that? So I said, look, don't worry. We want to drive everything via Git. We want to make everyone's life easy. We don't want to be storing these things in Amazon, getting them in Terraform. That's just going to become a huge mess. We can have a nice onboarding and offboarding process. So we had a root directory, relatively similar to the root directory that you just saw. The only difference here is that you have a SOPs file. The SOPs file contains the KMS key that's required for you to encrypt and decrypt the secrets that you've stored in Git. Why is this useful? Well, we drove everyone's AD or identity via Amazon, so we could choose who could encrypt or decrypt secrets. Same structure as before. Hopefully this is getting a little bit boring. Boring is beautiful when it comes to platform engineering. Here's a cluster-specific secret. It's not very interesting. You should hopefully be unable to read it. It's encrypted. Then with Flux, you can have a customization, and you simply specify that you're going to decrypt this with SOPs, and Flux does all the magic behind the scenes. It knows how to go and configure and go and get the key, the KMS key from Amazon. It decrypts it, creates it as a Kubernetes secret. So we have platform team repository, we have secrets, now we get onto the controversial one. What we're going to do with the product teams, because we've got tons of product teams, and guess what? They all want to do things differently. So we said, okay, well, what we're going to do is we're going to create you a template, and that template is going to be based off of the template that we've already used for our stuff. We want you to be able to commit to our stuff, and we can commit to your stuff. And that works when all of the patterns and paradigms are the same. It becomes very boring. Same structure as before. Example Helm release here. The only thing that you really need to be aware of is that the environment-specific config is here, and notice this tag here. This tag is 000. The reason why this tag is 000 is because the tag is specific to the environment that you're deploying to. Right? If we deploy 1.2.3, 1.2.3 is going to Sandbox. If we put that in the base configuration, all of the environments immediately get 1.2.3. Right? Incident, call Steve, why the hell did we choose GitOps? Sandbox patch, exactly the same as before, but what you'll notice here is there's some crazy JSON comment block at the end. This is essentially how we're going to do automatic image updates. Customization, exactly the same as before. So the image updates work in Flux by you having what's called an image repository. So this is a point of where do I go to find this image or set of images, and how often do I go there to look for new ones? Then you have a policy. So in this policy, you're saying, OK, I want to go to the Podman image repository, and I want you to look for all tags that start 5.0.x. That's all I want you to look at. Stops the rate limiting in GitHub, stops you being, in Docker Hub, stops you from being able to deploy things. Image update automation is another thing. Don't look at this too much. It essentially says, when I commit back to Git, what message do I give it in the Git commit? So Flux is going to be the one that's responsible for updating these images, which you'll see in a second. You can have different comment blocks depending upon how crazy you want to go. And then here's a final example configuration, right? So you've got the Helm release. You say, this is the repository that I care about. This is the location within the Kubernetes cluster where it is. So it's running in the Flux system namespace, and the repository that we've specified is called podinfo. So now, how do we do continuous delivery of microservices? So we had Git. They leveraged Concourse, not my choice. That's the choice that they wanted. We run it the same as we run every other workload. It was a Helm release. It was managed and maintained by a set of application developers. And they did a Docker push. It went up. We tagged that Docker image with dev-semantic version. We uploaded that to the registry. Flux is sitting there inside of Kubernetes. It patches the Helm release locally. It's the thing that runs kubectl apply. And then it commits the change back to Git. And it looks a little bit like this. So you can see here that we're saying automatic image update from Flux. This would be the name of the image. And then you can see here the Git diff, and we've gone from 0.18 to 0.19. Right? Everything auditable, everything repeatable. When the person comes in from audit and says, when were the last set of changes that you made, we just point at this. Right? And we have Git to be able to do that for us. So then there's this important thing called testing. Apparently it's really interesting and really useful, but whether it is or not, different story. So because we had a label taxonomy, we were able to have this script that said, wait for update, because we knew where we were going from and we knew where we were going to. Then we did this thing called testing, personally overrated. I prefer to test in production. And then to deploy to the next environment, we just re-tagged using that environment prefix at the front. So we had SBX for sandbox, dev for development, PRD for production, right? Relatively simple. Once we had one of these things working, we could have 50, we could have 100, we could have 150. It just worked, and we just rinsed and repeat the whole thing. Oh God, he's back again. So what about Kubernetes changes? Because actually deploying this thing is relatively easy. So we use this tool called Pluto. People familiar with Pluto? So Pluto is essentially the way of running deprecation checks against your YAML files. So you can specify, oh, I'm about to deploy to version X. Please run all of the deprecation checks against the new version and don't accept the pull request if it's going to break. All right, this is just confidence building. Then we went a little bit further because we love compliance at this bank, so we needed to have some kind of conformance. So we had conformance against the Kubernetes schemas to make sure that we weren't making silly mistakes. Developers aren't YAML experts. I don't think anyone is a YAML expert, honestly, anymore. And we needed to put these constraints in place to make sure that they didn't deploy anything stupid and we broke the system. So let's put this all together. What does this look like? So we had Terraform at the bottom with AWS. We had Kubernetes, it was EKS on top. We deployed K8's releases platform. That was really the starting point of how everything came together. We pointed at a specific directory. You can see here, this is the dev cluster, so we're pointing a customized dev, and we're writing the tag back to Flux sync dev. And then up comes the other things. So we have K8 releases corp, that's what brings in the money. We have K8 secrets, pretty obvious what that is. We have Kafka topics, hopefully you're getting bored now. K8's network policies, because we had to do security, and then Istio resources, because if you're not doing a service mesh, you're not really doing Kubernetes at all, apparently. And that was all at some directory and environment prefix, right? So we had the patterns and paradigms, but now the more important bit. So Alex came up to me in the hallway, and he said, Steve, I get it completely. I'm awfully sorry that I've been an absolute insert swear word here over the last couple of months. I used to be the one that they called at 3 a.m. in the morning, but now I'm the one that stops us from being called completely, right? And also, I've gone on holiday for the first time in 3 years, and I've turned my phone off. Why did he turn his phone off? Because everything's documented, everything's auditable, everything's boring, everything just continues to run. When it's an actual full-blown incident, they would call him, and in this instance, they didn't have it. And that's when I came to realize something, which is this. Perfect systems aren't perfect if you destroy the people who build them. You can have the most fantastic system you've ever built, but if the people are not enjoying building it, it's absolutely pointless. But that leads on to the next thing, which is the purpose of technology is to serve people, not to impress other engineers. Right? So we end up adding components to our Kubernetes clusters and our platforms to impress people at meetups, at conferences, sitting across at lunch, saying, oh, by the way, we upgraded from Istio 1.23 to 1.25. Oh, what does that give us? Nothing, but the latest version is 1.25, so we're running bleeding edge. Right? No one's impressed by this stuff. Stability is the most important metric that we all need to care about. So here are some of the business and career level metrics that we went on over this transformation. But really the main one was that we turned 7 engineers that were dreading and worried about their career in this organization to people that were paramount and driven and advocates of being able to deploy and manage this platform. And that is far more powerful than implementing any GitOps or anything like that, right? The human transformation was the most important part of this whole entire journey. They went from career anxiety to career confidence in the space of about 9 to 12 months, right? I turned Alex from a skeptic to an advocate. He would go out to these product teams and he would be the ambassador for the one that said, look, you need to drive this forward. We need to use this tooling. So I want to stop for a second. I want you to all think about a question that you could go back to your organization and it would get that 5 seconds of silence. Don't shout it out. Just think about it. So that's either your career's biggest opportunity or your biggest threat. And the choice is yours of what you do with it. So I've gone into more detail about this whole entire transformation in this playbook, right? This is not theory. This is 52 platform migrations working with senior leadership and helping them are able to answer the questions and ask the right questions when they couldn't get the platform team to talk the right language. Don't be the one that's ambushed by your CFO. Get ahead of the conversation. So I want to do a final commitment poll. What are you going to do in the next 48 or 72 hours? Are you going to ask that question? Are you going to ask that career-defining question? Are you going to download that survival guide? Are you going to start this GitOps pilot immediately? Are you going to try and find and protect your organization's Alex? Or are you going to update your resume because you're not ready for this? Right? And this is the brutal truth, right? There's people that are thinking about this operational risk constantly, right? Okay, so what you don't know is I'm going to hold you all accountable now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find you all on LinkedIn and I'm going to DM you and I'm going to say, what was the career-defining question that you asked and how well did Alex answer? So I want to leave you with an ultimate challenge. I want you to go back to your organization and I want you to ask the question that CFO asked in that boardroom. She said, how long would it take us to rebuild production if we lost it all tomorrow? If you get silence, you found your starting point. If you get it depends, you found your mission. Right? And the choice is you either have the answers to these questions or you get blindsided by the silence. Don't be the 7 engineers that are sat in that room. Be the one that's asking the questions. Thank you.